So thanks for being here. I am Jenny Howard Owen. I'm the Farmer Education Program Coordinator for Oak, and we have got a great group to share with you today. All right, there's a lot we can learn from each other. We have 5 creative and generous farmers joining us this morning to share their ideas, practices, and innovations. Here are their lovely faces. We are going to quickly introduce them to you. So first off this morning, we will meet Kenya Abraham. Kenya is a co-founder of Slak Farm, LLC. It's a micro dairy outside Lexington where the Abraham family specializes in production of their signature raw milk and halal meat products. Kenya has a strong dedication to utilizing their farm as a place for serving the well-being of not just her family, but the well-being of the raw milk community that they have built through their relationship farming. Kenya operates Stack a Story Bookshop, a 501c3 nonprofit that brings kids into agriculture through writing workshops, family farm stays, and barnyard expos. And she's also working as a farmer liaison, building relationships and working with others to push beyond the issues and limitations of systemic racism and bottlenecks within the industry that affect small farmers. She currently does that work as a board member for Community Farm Alliance, among other things. Last year, Kenya was awarded the Small Farmer of the Year Award from Kentucky State University and received the 2020 Emerging Leader Award from Community Farm Alliance. We'll also hear from Jeff Ashba. Jeff and his wife Sandy, their son and daughter-in-law, started their 51-acre organic farm at Bear Creek in Ohio in 2004. The farm grows certified organic vegetables and produces a line of value-added products. Produce and products are home delivered to the consumer, and they're also available at several Cincinnati area retailers. Jeff and Sandy host student farm tours and do presentations to local groups. They're great educators. Jeff holds a BS in design from the University of Cincinnati, is a member of the Clermont County Planning Commission, and sits on the board of the Cincinnati Permaculture Institute. Thanks for being here. We'll also learn from Adam Barr. Adam Barr has a shorter bio in front of me, but is no less a wealth of information. He's been a longtime member of Oak. He is co-owner of Barr Farms, which is a 6th generation family farm in Rhodelia, Kentucky. Barr Farms raises organic produce, grass-fed beef, and pastured chicken and pork for CSA and farmers markets. And we welcome Kristi Durbin. Kristi Durbin has been farming at the University of Kentucky since 2012 and has been managing the UK CSA program since 2016. UK CSA has been in operation for 15 years and serves hundreds of local families. Kristi is also an instructor in the Sustainable Ag and Community Food Systems program in the Department of Horticulture at UK. We'll round out the farmer hacks today with Jim Embry of Atris Ballou Farm and the Sustainable Communities Network. Jim is the 5th generation of his family to occupy their 30-acre farm and is very blessed to continue the tradition of being agrarian intellectual activist at the local, national, and international level. His farm, their family farm, serves as an environmental education center, a site for women's retreats and sweat lodges, an inspiration for pollinator habitats, beekeeping, medicinal herbs, heirloom seed production, genealogy research, and much more. I can't imagine that you can keep up with much more, Jim. That's a lot. So we welcome all of them, and we'll get rolling. Up first, we've got a short video from Kenya Abraham of Slak Farm in Lexington.
Farm hack number 1 for our farm is moving round bales. We don't have a tractor, we don't have a skid steer or anything like that. So the only thing we do have right now for equipment is our zero turn. And so we've rigged up a way to move these bales with a little bit of muscle, but basically we use a piece of plywood on the ground, and this is not something solely to us that we just came up with, but through watching a couple videos we learned that pulling things actually works. And so we use these chains here, we hook it to our Kubota lawn tractor, and we'll demonstrate how that works out. We just flip over the bales, my kids flip it over onto it, and we pull it away.
Good? I hate it.
Where is this going? Across the street? You going across the street with us? Yeah, well, let's go.
Angel.
Take a couple of salt blocks over to them. Mineral. May as well put it all on there. Hopefully it won't fall off. Get it to the middle, Mama. It's also a fun ride for the kids. Wait, the Melody's there. Melody, crush my best goat. Come on. There.
Let's go. Mama, you want to ride?
Now, are you leaving a block here? I don't want to ride.
Go around that way at full speed.
Another good hack that we have is for our hand wash sink in the creamery. We didn't have legs for this sink, and so I needed to figure out how to mount it onto something. And we went to a college surplus that was over in Indiana, and they had a cart, which is actually, this is a linen cart for a hospital. So like this would be where the charts were held at. And it had that flip top lid, that would flip up. But we looked at the size, and it looked like our sink would fit right down inside of there. And it just did. So we put our sink in, and it sits just right. And so I haven't plumbed it out yet, but I will when I plumb it out, and we'll probably lock the wheels down here at the bottom. But here's the little foot rest thing that used to lift the lid up here for the cart. No longer in use. I'm not finished rigging this up, but it will be very handy dandy. And so that's another one of our hacks. it worked out really well. That works out well for anybody that might have a commercial kitchen setup going on. If you ever have an issue with trying to figure out how to get legs on the sink, you can always go with a laundry hamper from the hospital. That last hack that we showed with the tobacco seed trays, I just want to say that I've come across tobacco seed trays all over the place on Craigslist. And so a lot of the tobacco farmers who are out of that industry have them for really cheap and sometimes for free. And it's great for installation. Our creamery we put 750 trays in that creamery building, in the ceiling, above the ceiling, for the attic space, and also in one of our interior walls. And it has been so warm in there this winter. And also that moving the round bales with that 4x4 lawn tractor has also worked out for just pushing those bales onto our pallets that we laid on the ground for storage. And so all the videos we have, usually we put up on our YouTube, and you can capture that or take a look at what we do. But just wanted to comment that if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll circle back to those things, the questions.
Thank you so much, Kenya. Yes, that was one of my earlier script fobbles, was not mentioning that for all of these, if you have questions come to mind, please do put them in the chat. We're going to keep track of them in the background and come back to Q&A at the end of the session with all of the farmers. With Kenya and her family, the ingenuity, the teamwork, the repurposing, I love it. I love every bit of it. So thank you, Kenya. Good tips. Yeah. And thank you for the bonus hacks. Much appreciated. Thank your family for us.
Yes, ma'am.
So now we're going to jump north across the Ohio River to the organic farm at Bear Creek with Jeff Ashba.
Good morning. We're very happy to be here. Much like Kenya, we do a lot of reuse and repurpose and adaptation when it comes to needing things around the farm. This particular hack involves homemade sticky traps, which we've been using for probably close to our 18 years that we've been farming, and they've been very successful, and they use a lot of waste material and reuse of existing materials to create them. So here's the video.
We're here today to spend a few minutes and show you a hack that we've developed over the years. As we go into our 18th year of farming, we've found quite a few things that we can do that make life a little bit easier here. We're inside today because we picked a blustery November day to do this, but I'm going to just give you a quick little overview. You'll see arrayed before me here the things that you need for this hack. And it is designed to help you with insect control, both in the greenhouse and in the field. You'll need a container of some kind, and you can use a variety of containers. We have a lot of these large cans that we use, but anything like an empty container like this, an old water bottle, a small can, all those work really good for what we're going to do. You're going to create sticky traps that will work for cabbage moths, whiteflies, aphids, thrips, and a number of other pests that you're going to find in your greenhouse and your field. In addition to the can containers here, you'll need some kind of a stake or stick, which many of you may have old tobacco stakes, and those work perfectly fine. We happen to have a lot of step-in posts or some dowel rods that we'll use. And you also need petroleum jelly. If you go to your local farm store, you're going to find packs of sticky traps, 3 to 5 inch cards, painted yellow with a sticky substance on them, and they're going to run you about $6 for a pack of 9. To do this, you're going to use things you have around the house, a $1.25 jar of petroleum jelly, and everything else is probably going to be a found item. Oh, and also a can or a spray can or a small can of yellow paint, which again is going to cost you $3 or so. So the first thing you do is take your container and you coat it with yellow. It's been determined that yellow is an attractant for the insects that I mentioned. So you get your containers painted yellow. Then you're going to get yourself a plastic bag. And this is a produce bag that you can get every time you go to the grocery store, particularly in the winter now, which is a good time to do these things, so you're ready for next spring and summer in your greenhouse and your garden. So you get this bag, you've got your can painted yellow. You're going to take the bag, you're going to slip it over the can. Then you're going to take your petroleum jelly, and you're going to get in there and you're going to coat this bag with petroleum jelly. Then you go out in the field and you put your stake in at an appropriate spot within your plantings of your leafy greens, of your cabbage, any plants that you want to protect. And this goes on top like that, or you can set it directly on the ground with the open side of the container down if you've got some low crops you want to protect from insects. So not only will it attract the insects by the yellow, and they'll get stuck on the sticky part, it also is a good indicator of what insects early on may be present in your field, and then you can either continue with these traps or you can do another method that you might want to control the insects. And when you're done, when this gets filled up with a lot of dead insects, you can simply pull the plastic bag off and repeat the process using the same yellow painted can with a new bag. The can that you see here has been in service probably for 2 or 3 years. So at the end of the season, we gather these cans up, we put them in a dry place out of the way, and come next spring, we're ready to go with a new bag, a new coat of petroleum jelly, and control the insects. So thank you for your time. Hope you found this of interest. Feel free to reach out if you've got any questions. We'd love to hear from you if it's been successful on your farm. Thank you.
Jeff, any extras you want to add to that or follow-up comments?
We find this to be real useful for things like cabbage moths, aphids, thrips, gnats, those kinds of things. And we've been using it successfully, as I said, for several years, in particularly our lettuce, spinach, those kind of things that we grow quite a bit of, any kind of leafy greens. So it's been real successful for us.
Nice. All right, pick any questions you've got for Jeff and we'll circle back to those later. I love the creativity. I love the thriftiness of all of these. And thanks to Sandy for the tech help on that. Thanks to you, Jeff, and your family for sharing that idea with us. We're going to travel west and hop back down to the Bluegrass State with Adam Barr of Barr Farms.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, just wanted to do a quick, just to say a quick word about kind of how our farm has grown in the last several years, because it's relevant to the size of our greenhouse and the onion conundrum that a lot of farmers have, I think, because starting onions in January or February, whenever you do start them, and raising your own onion starts is a challenge. There aren't a lot of commercial onion starts available organically. And so when you do them in a greenhouse, if you're doing them in a single cell or a few onion seeds per cell, it can take up a lot of bench space. And we found that, yeah, our customers demand onions. You know, we could sell onion every day of the year. It's the most popular, yet maybe understated vegetable, because people use them in everything. So we always like to have a lot of onions. And when we grew, our CSA, you know, started to double in size in 2014, 2015, we quickly ran out of greenhouse space, and we weren't very quick to build on additional greenhouse space. And I've seen a few people starting onions using this method, well, using the bed method instead of the cell tray method. So yeah, pardon my voice right now, and also the greenhouse mess. I think this video was taken in the peak summer months when Jenny and brook were out there. So there's no onions in the bed that you can see right now. And I don't have a whole lot of additional material video to show, but I can talk about this a little more after you see the video there.
Yeah, it was high summer and the stinging nettle had taken over that bed.
Yeah.
We just did 10 rows of onions in this in-soil mix, and there's radiant heat in the PEX piping coming through there, coming from a wood boiler that we have set up out there. It heats the bed, and so we didn't heat the greenhouse. We just covered this with plastic and germinated onions at the end of January in here. And they grew up. We didn't top them well. I feel like we probably should have topped them a little better to continue their growth, but we were able to shave them all in place right here. And like I said, it was about 28,000, which that many in this size area worked really well with this design, but in terms of plug trays, it would have just been way more space than what we have. So
yeah, and again, that number is pretty close to accurate. We put about 28,000 seeds out in that bed, 30,000 seeds. It was just weighing seeds out, you know, with a small digital scale, and sprinkle them in 10 rows in that bed. And then once you apply the heat underneath with the PEX, you know, radiant heat there, we just covered them with plastic on the top of the wood of the bed, and there was enough heat and humidity. They popped right up, and, you know, it was like it is right now outside when we did that in the greenhouse. And the greenhouse temp, we never had to bring it above 30 or 40 degrees because we didn't start any of our early crops until February 1st or the first week of February usually. So we did that late January, planting onions that way, and it worked really well. That was the first year we tried it that way. We had done the bed method before, but it was hard to get them to germinate. So when we added this wood boiler a year and a half ago, I saw the opportunity to use that radiant heat. And yeah, they took right off. We used Fort V potting mix, and that, you know, grows a great transplant for sure on onions. The only trick with these is, you know, you don't have any root mass when you pull the plugs to plant them in the field. You know, they don't have a root mass like they would in a plug. Sorry, they're just bare root. So I find that before we set them out, we pretty much have to turn the water on while we're planting, and, you know, keep the water on all day to make sure that those onion roots get the water they need. Because I think when we planted them out into March, early April, it was like 75, 80 degrees, and yeah, we didn't get the water to them in time. A few of them, they wilt pretty fast. So those are my tips. And again, somebody else is doing the bed already, but I think our piping underneath is a good way to do this without heating your whole greenhouse.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam, very much, especially with your voice and your battle with the throat issues right now. I hope that tea continues to help. That is a lot of onion starts, and I know that could be spurring some ideas for people who might be needing a similar solution. So thank you very much. Solutions abound back in Lexington when we're talking about the University of Kentucky Organic Farming Unit, and that's where we find Kristi Durbin.
Thanks, Jenny. So I'm going to talk a bit about this tool you're looking at, which is our stale seedbed cultivator. This is a custom tool that was built on our farm. You may be able to find some commercial versions that are similar in nature, but it also might just be a way to think about creatively how you're going to handle weeds pre-plant for you. So I do have a video that's going to show you the tool in action, and I'll try to comment on the salient points during that video. And this is just a clip from a larger video on our YouTube channel. So let's go ahead and watch that, and then I'll kind of summarize what we looked at afterwards. So we run a bare ground production system at the farm where we have about 10 bare ground beds in each plot that's 50 feet wide. And to build our beds, they're about 37 inches wide, and we use the stale seedbed cultivator to not only form the beds, but also to provide the pre-plant cultivation. So this tool was built from a different components. I will talk a little bit about those components after the video, but it is kind of ganged together to think about how you might offer weed control by different mechanisms, whether it's uprooting, slicing, crushing, or burying that weed. Okay, so we'll just watch it here as we get it established. You will notice there is buried drip tape that we use in the bed that's below the level of which this cultivator operates. Here I'm just kind of showing that it is a shallow depth of only 1 to 2 inches, whereas our drip tape is buried at 3 to 4 inches, so it won't be disturbed. One of the other benefits of this tool is that it really kind of establishes a semi-raised bed. It's not a true raised bed, but you will see that just by the actions of the wheels, that it kind of builds up the bed in between the tractor and a kind of like a semi-raised bed. Okay, so let's go back. So there's the list of all the different components. The sweeps are in the middle and also on the side for the shoulders or the wheel tracks. They kind of uproot and slice the weeds. Meeker harrows also doing slicing, rolling basket, uprooting. The Lilliston rolling cultivators are actually on the sides of the machine, so they're kind of falling behind the tire tracks of the tractor. And so they do provide for some weed control on the shoulders of the bed, as well as a little bit in the wheel track itself. The last component is the bed roller. This is kind of critical because it really provides a smooth surface for planting, whether you're direct seeding or transplanting. And so the bed roller really does a good job of pressing down and providing the pressure on the top of the soil for a good seed bed. This is just going to show you, there was a trial done in 2017 at the farm. So we've been using this for a long time, but we finally actually got some data about this. And so in 2017, they did a trial where they did very different cultivations. And what was neat about the trial too was there was a rain event in between every cultivation. Each cultivation was spaced out by about 7 days. And then there was always a rain event in between. And so you can kind of see in this trial, there was 1 cultivation, 2, 3, and 4 different passes before you plant, and you resulted in a lot of different types of weed pressure. So when you had 2 cultivations, there was a 42% reduction in weeds. When you had 3 or 4 cultivations, you're getting up into over 90% weed control pre-plant. So that really kind of tells you a little bit about the efficacy of this tool, how great it is to really reduce your weed pressure even before you get your plant in the ground. So really critical for us was getting 3 or 4 cultivations in, which means that we're having to make sure our beds and our fields are established about a month prior to when we went to plant into that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kristi. You and the crew at the UK South Farm have and continue to offer so many great resources for our farmer network. If any of you out in the audience don't know what I'm talking about, you should check in with Kristi. Join us at one of the field days we do out at South Farm, or just connect with her directly. They have a lot of publications that they have created out of their learning farm. And outside of Lexington, on a family farm of 5 generations in Madison County, we'll visit with Jim Embry.
Wonderful. Great to be here this morning. As was mentioned, our farm here goes back, we say, to 1800, when we were brought here from Virginia in enslaved condition. But we farmed this land, we love this land, and our grandmamas had babies in the field in this land. So I'm just feel blessed to be able to continue that family legacy. And that family legacy is written in, I might say, just a real beautiful essay that I wrote that's in this book on my, up here. It's called We Are Each Other's Harvest. I hope you all would take time to find that book and the essay. My honor to be here. Let's watch the video. So our farm project was actually one of 3 that was funded through our Madison County NRCS office as part of their EQUIP program. So we were able to get 3 projects funded. First was the organic transition plan. that was completed by our dear friends over at Grow Appalachia. And then secondly, we were to construct 2 high tunnels, and these were built by the wonderful people, the wonderful Amish community over in Crab Orchard. And then thirdly, we were able to get funding for this pollinator conservation project that covered 12 acres of our 30-acre farm. Now, as we know, I'm sorry, 5 years ago, I joined in with the Kentucky Pollinator Stakeholder Group, which is a statewide organization of about people from 60 different community sectors. Now, we've developed 3 very informative and wonderful documents. First of all is the Kentucky Pollinator Protection Plan, and then the Kentucky Pollinator Handbook, and thirdly, the Kentucky Monarch Conservation Plan. I recommend that you all get a copy of all these 3 publications. They are available online for free in PDF format from the respective organizational websites. Now, we know how important pollinators are, and I came back home from that statewide meeting, and 5 years ago as well, I helped develop what's called the Madison County Pollinator Working Group, composed of about 15 various representatives from folks like city, state, federal government, utility companies, higher education, arts group, public library, and various nonprofits. Now, every year we sponsor what is called the Pollinator Appreciation Day, which is generally held during what's called National Pollinator Week. 3 years ago, we also got funding to work on installing pollinator gardens in 20 schools in Madison County, Letcher County, and Fayette County. The funding also covered all the materials for these pollinator gardens, as well as 2 teacher workshops with all kinds of books and materials. Part of our work as well within our countywide working group is to go through the protocol of getting this recognition, Bee City USA, for the local governments for Richmond and Berea. Along with that, we've also worked to get the designation of Bee Campus USA for EKU and Berea College. Now, about our particular farm project. Our farm sits in Madison County, which is at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. It's bathed by Kentucky River watershed. It's also on land that was traditionally inhabited by the Shawnee, Cherokee, and Weechee indigenous peoples. Now, my family folks were brought here in an enslaved condition in 1800, so we claimed this land from 1800. Now, my great-great-grandparents, again, who came out of enslavement, were able to purchase this land actually in 1889. Now, the first priority with this conservation project was to cut the fields that hadn't been mowed in a couple of years. As you can see here, we had lots of small trees, bramble bushes, and then we had 2 areas that were heavily infested with Johnson grass. We know how hard Johnson grass can be to get. The NRCS agents recommended that we use Roundup as the herbaceous weed treatment, even though we had just gotten this organic transition plan written up for our farm. But I said, no, I don't want to use Roundup. So I began to research the various organic herbicides that might be available for our use. I did find this compound here called Burnout that was actually available at the local Lowe's store here in Madison County. Now, here's how the fields looked after applying the Burnout in July of 2020, and then a second treatment over the Johnson grass areas in September. By springtime, here's how those fields looked, and we were able to get a seeder from our dear friends over at Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, and then we used the seed mixture from Roundstone Seed Company, And this seed mixture was about 13 varieties of grasses, annuals, and perennials. And here's how those fields looked that late spring and April and May, and quite a bit diversity compared to how the fields looked before. Now here's an area that we dug up twice. One of those areas that was heavily infested with Johnson grass. And what we did there, we went to Tri-County Seed Company and we purchased crimson clover. And the clover was meant to compete with the Johnson grass. It did it quite well, by the way. Here was our timeline. We began in July 2020, and the project was completed this fall. So it is our desire that our farm be a pollination station, and our farm is meant to be in rhythm and be in harmony with how the earth operates.
Thank you, Jim. We really appreciate your work for these many years, not only in the pollinator habitat and school garden and environmental education work you're doing, but also in elevating your family's history. We thank you so much for sharing all of these aspects about your farm today. Thanks very much. For everyone out there, Jim has also compiled an excellent resource list for all of these resources that he mentioned today. There were so many of them that we put them together in a document. So as not to ruin the surprise, they're not yet in the HUVA agenda block for this session, but they will be after the event, the entire event. I won't be doing it tonight, with the recording of this session, and all these sessions are being recorded. For those interested in working with NRCS to explore this idea of pollinator habitat or other conservation practices, do stick around for some of our later sessions today with Adam Chambers after our keynote, and especially the Farm Biodiversity and Conservation panel at the end of the day. You'll learn a lot more in addition to all that Jim has shared. So returning to that idea of taking a breath, we're going to give our farmers a little breath, and we'll return to them in just a few minutes. But just a few items I wanted to share first. For those of you who are interested in continuing the learning from and with other farmers, we have these events that we'd like you to mark your calendar for. They're all on-farm events except that last one. And the first one at Modern Heritage Farm, I think I saw Jessica out there in the world. That registration is open on our field days page. You can get to that in HUVA on the field days link under resources. You can find all of this on our website. It looks like we have got questions for everybody. So I'm just going to go down the list as it goes one at a time, so you'll know where you fall, farmers, so be ready. Kenya, we'll start off with you. And Annie was grateful for your presentation. She liked your ideas and wondered if the plywood is just flat on the ground, or do you have anything underneath it to act as skids? Hold on just a second. I'm going to try to get you to unmute.
Yeah, I just started talking. Sorry. It is just flat on the ground, and we use like heavy duty tow trains. Just drilled a hole through it. I think it's 3/4 inch thick. It might be an inch thick plywood. I honestly don't know. I believe it might be an inch. But anyway, those chains are really strong for towing. So, but it's just flat on the ground, and we take it everywhere. I utilize it's another farm hack I didn't mention. We utilize our neighbors' properties and their land instead of, you don't have to own the land to do this. You can just control the land. And so that's one thing, is controlling what's around you. If you're worried about your neighbors spraying, then go to them and say, how about we make this happen? But you do need to figure out how you're going to get hay to animals across the street. So hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think Annie will let us know if she needs to know more, but that sounded complete to me. We'll shift over to Jeff now. And Natalie liked your idea. She's always looking to figure out ways to work with the pest. And I'm going to ask you to unmute Jeff, because she wants to know, do you find that it traps beneficial bugs as well? Have you had an issue with trapping the bugs you don't necessarily want to trap?
We have not found that it traps beneficial insects. Now, one thing we also do on the farm, we plant a lot of intercropping for pollinators as well as things around the border of the fields, particularly echinacea, lavender, marigolds, things like that. So the pollinators gravitate towards those, and I've never seen any pollinators, particularly bees and the beneficial insects like that, become trapped on these sticky traps.
All right, well, that's good to hear. I'm wondering, Adam, how about you? Annie is full of questions today. Thanks, Annie. What time of year do you lift those onion starts? I think you said March, April.
Yeah, I don't like to put onions out later than the first week of April if the weather will cooperate. But you know, March is a good time, into March, and
Lots of irrigation.
yeah, just depends on the weather, but definitely it was a hot March for a bit of spell last year, so.
Yeah. Great. Kristi, you mentioned those multiple passes with the cultivation. What kind of time frame do you have between each of those passes or cultivation passes?
Ideally a week, 7 to 10 days. And, it's also dependent upon the weather, trying to work with that and make sure it's not too wet. It's dry enough to actually bring it in the tractor. And obviously with every renovate, you're going to get another flush of weeds. So, but you want to get the weeds early when they're at the thread stage. So whenever the smallest you can get it. So usually about every 7 days.
Nice. Jim, I know there's been a little conversation about this in the chat, but Mary was talking about her county's master gardeners wanting to install a pollinator way station, and they're wanting to kill off that current grass and the weeds and plant pollinator habitat there. And so this does bring up a question about, and I see some of it in the chat, but I haven't tracked it all, about what you are using.
Well, again, if you're applying it to a small area, again, there's a whole host of like organic practices that can be used to remove weeds. I mean, you can use cardboard. When we go out and we do the gardens in the schools, we just use cardboard, okay, to lay it down. You can use mulch. There's a whole range of things, okay, that you can use. And you can use vinegar. You can get what you might call it industrial strength acetic acid, different locations. There's a whole range of things you can use. On our farm, because it was 12 acres, and we were trying to make it a decent cost. If we were going to use acetic acid, it would be far more than what the burnout cost us. So I hope that, I don't know if that answers the question or not. Again, I left on the chat my email, my phone number. Everybody here who's interested in things like that can feel free to call me, email me, and I can give you my records and let you know what my research was. Again, I was just kind of flabbergasted, about a year and a half ago when NRCS they were kind of, not do no disrespect, they were somewhat pushy or not say insistent. They were just encouraging the one idea of using Roundup. And I just kept kind of pushing back and researching, and I called my dear friends at Oak, picked their brains, and then finally I came to a conclusion that my best option was the crimson clover, and I will go out probably another week or so in February, and I will probably I will go up to Tri-County and get another bag of that crimson clover and do a second application this spring. Hope that helps.
I'm going to stick with you, Jim, just for a moment, if that's all right, and sure. Just mention that Steve Muntz had a good comment about grazing being a good way to kill Johnson grass.
Oh yeah.
and a lot of those challenging, more robust.
Oh yeah.
weeds.
Oh yeah. Again, I can share with my notes to more detail. I studied all different angles. I recall reading and talking to folks about hogs, bringing hogs in, okay, and let our hogs and maybe even goats and let them, you know, kind of fence them in, let them do their thing. But I don't have hogs, and nor do I have goats, nor do I have friends I can herd down Charlie Norris Road, a big 200 or 300, you know, head of goats, okay. When I was in Italy, okay, I saw what happened way up in the mountains where they were herding the cows, you know, down from the mountains to the lower levels, as well as, you know, the sheep. But so I had to use what I could, you know, practically use, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really is something that I advise everybody to think about, especially if you are working on transitioning your property to certified organic, or if you are certified organic, you know well that you need to check with that certifier you're going to be working with or are working with. Call us at Oak. We can connect you to the right people or work with you on that. But you want to make sure that there is an acceptable certification from a third party on those products, like Embry is the most often used. KDA here in Kentucky being our most frequent certifier, has a couple of others that they, Pennsylvania and Washington, I believe, that they go by. But you always want to check with that certifier first for any of those kind of products you're adding. Thanks, Jim, for that. There was a little bit of great conversation in the chat about following up on Adam's Fort V reference that he's using for his plant starts. So check that out. There might be some resources in the chat that you'd be interested in. There was a little bit also with Adam's hack of using 1040 seeds instead of beds or seed trays and planting them out as bare roots from that. And maybe we can get Adam to share his whole wood boiler set up in a video in the future. There seems to be some great interest in that. I love their greenhouse. It's great. Up to Jeff, there is a question from Adam. Did the petroleum jelly go on the outside of the bag or the inside of the bag for your sticky trap?
The petroleum jelly goes on the outside of the bag, and it's what the insects stick to. And after it gets a little bit filled up with insects, simply pull the bag off, dispose of it, and a fresh bag on and some fresh petroleum jelly. That also allows us to, as I said, I think in the video, we've been using the same painted cans or objects for years, and simply put a new bag on, some new petroleum jelly, and you're good to go.
Sorry if I'm having you repeat this, but repetition helps us all learn. You mount those on a stake or something around the property and in key locations, is that right?
Well, you can do a number of things. Sometimes for low crops like lettuce, for example, or spinach, we'll simply take the cans, turn them upside down, obviously, so they don't collect water, and put them right on the ground. But otherwise, for things like green beans that may be climbing up, or bush beans, something like that, we'll put them on some stakes. And it's kind of a trial and error, depending on what you're trying to catch. You know, we've had good success with them catching caterpillar moths, the white moths, which seem to plague us every year. And for those, we find the cans work better if they're up off the ground a little bit. And again, any kind of a stake. And as I said, it doesn't have to be a can. It can be a bottle. It can be a block of wood that you paint yellow. The yellow is an attractant to some of the insects, and the petroleum jelly obviously traps them in there. It's also just a good way to get insect counts to see what's going on in your field. You know, what kind of insects do you have?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It makes sense. It looks like a brassica flower. If it's
Right.
yellow,
Right.
I guess like that, it
That's
seems
what the
real
insects
logical.
Yeah, yeah. Cynthia Rice, there's one question that I'm not going to get to because I'm noticing the time and we need to somewhat wrap this up. But get with Kenya about the tobacco trays. Well, actually, this is a yes/no question. You could pretty much answer, Kenya. Are you finding that using tobacco trays for insulation in the roof make it prone to deteriorate or a fire hazard? Do you need to space it around electrical wires, that type of thing?
That's a very good question. That is like, I think it's polystyrofoam. So it's like basically a styrofoam material, and it's highly flammable. And so you could like spray it with a retardant, but we weren't going to do that. Our electric, this is a farm garage building. And so our electric is actually on the inside. And I figured if we're going to catch fire somewhere and it happens, and by the time it reaches up into that ceiling, that building's already going anyway. So it also, though, we have ventilation in that attic space and a fan going that like exerts stuff, because that, again, that's plastic and it can let off fumes. We also, you should never put this in your home. Don't try to styrofoam your tiny house that you're building or like for insulation. Don't do that. It's not for living spaces, but we're doing a room in our barn for our goats to birth over winter. And so that will be insulated with that. I mean, if the barn's on fire, the barn is going. Believe me, it's not going to be those trays that are going to be the first thing. So I think I answered your question, I hope, but that's basically some thought for that. Yeah.
Thanks so much. And thanks to everybody for being here. Throw some reactions, some comments in the chat to let these farmers know how awesome you think they are. We think they're great. Kenya, Jeff, Kristi, Adam, Jim, thank you very much. We appreciate you greatly.